City of Stevens Point City Plan Commission meeting, recorded January 2nd, 2024.
Six o'clock. We will call the regular City Plan Commission meeting to order. Brian, you want to call the roll?
Weeza.
Here.
Kneebone.
Here.
Arnson.
Here.
Beacom.
Here.
Cooper.
Here.
Rice.
Here.
And Schuler.
Here.
Wow. First time this year we've had everybody here.
In person.
I had to use that joke at some point. All right. Item number 2 is the report of the December 4th, 2023 minutes and actions of the City Plan Commission.
There's a slight change at the top. Accidentally, November 4th, 2023 was left on the top of the report, and that should be December 4th, 2023. So we'll make that correction internally, but with that, staff would recommend approval.
Moved by Cooper, seconded by Arnson. Discussion? Hearing and seeing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 3 is a public hearing and subsequent action on a request from the City of Stevens Point to apply a permanent zoning designation of R3 single family and 2 family residential for a property located at 5595 Regent Street, consistent with Chapter 23.01 sub 13 sub B sub 8. Adam, you want to give us a rundown on this?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. So as the Commission may recall, this Commission and the Council approved the annexation of the subject parcel 5595 Regent Street back in November. As far as any annexation goes, once a parcel is annexed into the city limits, automatically a temporary zoning classification of low-density residential is placed on the property until such time that a permanent zoning classification is placed. Within our zoning code, we do outline that applying this permanent zoning designation would have to take place within 90 days, which we're well within that standard, again, since it was last annexed in November of 2023. So you see in the agenda packet 3 primary review standards to look at with any rezoning requests. 1, making sure that the proposed zoning classification meets some of the minimum performance standards for that district, standards such as setbacks, lot size, lot width, etc. 2nd being consistency with the city's comprehensive plan, namely in this case for the subject property consistency with the city's extraterritorial future land use map. And then 3rd, consistency with the surrounding area, focusing on, as you can see on the left-hand side of the screen, the location of the subject parcel relative to other zoning, other lots that are zoned in various different zoning districts. You see on the screen primarily R1 suburban single family and R3 single and 2 family residential. So with that said, staff did take a look at the request. As I mentioned before, the performance standards are met with this request. The extraterritorial future land use map does show the parcel designated for residential use, which I'll note that does imply both single and 2 family uses, while the subject parcel at this time is used as a single family and foresee to be used as a single family home in the future. It would meet that standard, and then consistency as well, given the surrounding zoning designations. Staff does feel that there is consistency there. So staff would recommend approval, and I'll just note for the public hearing, we do have 1 written testimony included in the packet.
Adam, before we get started, just so everybody here and watching at home knows, the hash marks on the picture on the right side of the screen, what do those denote?
Depth to groundwater. So the hash marks is 0 to 3 feet depth to groundwater from grade.
Okay.
Not anything.
So it has nothing to do with zoning.
Correct.
And the yellow, which is predominantly on that graphic, is what?
Residential.
Okay, thank you. Before we open up the public hearing, are there any clarifying questions from any of the commissioners? Okay, then I will declare the public hearing open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony, step to the lectern and provide that testimony. Don't all jump at once.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Dave Wills from 1909 Mary's Drive, and I'm also town chairman for the town of Hull. And we're here tonight to speak a little bit to your plan to move this to R3. I believe it's R2 right now. I'm here to advocate for our citizens who are concerned how the zoning might affect them. It's kind of a corner lot, and everything around it is R2, and this is one piece that's going to stick out and be an R3. We don't know the intention, if it's going to have two families built there or not, so there's some concern about that. And I'm asking if there's a way that the zoning could be buffered into the new unbuilt areas north of that and do your blending there and leave this parcel completely alone. There's been quite a bit of growing concern. Many of our Hull residents from that general area, and I get phone calls on a very regular basis about they bought another piece of land, what does that mean to us, where are they coming up with utilities, and those sorts of things. So there's been a lot of activity on the city's part with purchasing and annexation and future annexation coming up, and how that affects that whole general area. I think this is one of those that certainly patterns that. And I'm wondering if it's time, because we've talked before, is it time to get your plans together about that whole general area and have a community outreach program someplace sponsored by both communities, so people around there can kind of know what the plan is, because they're resisting to this because they don't know what the next step is going to be. And I've taken that same pattern, you know, so think about that. Is it time to consider putting together, a bigger way of looking at this? So I'll take any questions or concerns. And I know this is a public hearing and we're just supposed to say, but I'm against this. I'd like to just leave it as R2 where it is. Or does the city not use R2 and only R1, Adam?
R2 would be the county zoning, the current county zoning.
Okay, so R1 is a city designation?
Our low density residential right now is a temporary zoning classification. Okay. So the R2 on the county's end is separate from our R2 zoning district, our R3 zoning district.
Okay, well, whatever R2 is in the city, that's where you should go. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate you.
Public hearing remains open. Public hearing is still open.
I guess I'd like to chime in. Can you hear me?
We can. Your name, sir?
My name is Kurt. I'm owner of 5615 Regent Street.
Okay, and could you spell your last name, sir?
Litterski.
Got it. Yep. Thank you. Go ahead.
I guess I'd just like to make the point that there's quite a few parcels already that are R3 to the south. I just don't see why this particular piece would need to be R3 if we're looking for more housing or something of that nature. And like the previous gentleman said, the intent of this going to R3, we don't know. So, but there's plenty of R3 like duplexes. There's apartments to the south of a couple blocks. So to make this an R3, to open up that, I mean, it just doesn't seem right. So I guess I would like to vote as objecting to this being an R3 zone.
Thank you very much. Public hearing remains open.
Hi, I'd like to object to R3 also, R3 zoning. The surrounding areas are single family. We live in a nice, safe, quiet neighborhood, and I would like to keep it that way.
Thank you. Public hearing remains open.
We need name and address.
Yeah. I'm sorry.
What exactly is R3?
Name and address, please.
Oh, Sue Varga, 601 Leonard Street.
And actually, I have to get, ma'am, I have to get your name and address for the record as well.
Audrey Roberts, 511 Leonard Street.
Got it?
Yep.
Thank you. Go ahead, Sue.
So what exactly is R3? Duplex or more?
So again,
building-
this is a public hearing, so normally we don't do question and answers. But for the sake of those who don't know that, Adam or Ryan, you want to just explain very briefly what R3 is?
Yeah, more than happy to provide that explanation. So R3 is single and two-family residential zoning. Essentially what it is it allows a single-family residence to be constructed consistent with the surrounding neighborhood and what's there now. It also allows for like a duplex development or a zero lot line development if that were to occur into the future. It does allow for a little higher density residential single and two-family development as opposed to like low-density residential, which has a much larger lot size requirement. And so this is just kind of one of the steps in the city's larger conversation about, the future subdivision development on the north side of Regent and Gala, where those lots will include a number of zero lot line and single family. It does not allow, the R3 zoning does not allow apartments, does not allow threeplexes or anything like that. It has to be either single family or two family, and two family being defined as either a true duplex development or a zero lot line development.
Could it be the whole thing duplex development?
It is possible, provided they meet the minimum area requirements for duplex development exclusively. Yeah, it is possible.
Okay, thank you.
One duplex.
Well, yeah, one duplex on each zoning lot. Yeah, sorry, correct. Thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, I didn't want to give the impression that this could have been, 4 duplexes on the same lot. That's not going to work that way. Public hearing remains open.
Hi, I'm Debbie Check. I live at 5616 Regent Street, so we're kitty corner from where that area is that you're looking at. I just want to understand that what you're saying is in that small property there, where there's one home right now, you're looking to build or put two more buildings in that area?
No, not at all.
Okay.
This is just a zoning change.
Just a zoning change, okay. And so across from that, where there's a whole open area, what are you trying what are you looking at doing there in the future? Is what you're talking about the duplexes, or?
Well, that's not on the agenda, but for the sake of making sure everybody's informed, that's planned subdivision, and that's where it had been when the previous owner had it.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about apartments coming in there or two-story type living?
So how our zoning code is set up, really R3, R2, R1, and RLD, those are the single-family zoning districts. R3 is the kind of the odd one out because it does allow duplex or zero lot line development. It does not allow for apartment development to occur. If that were to occur, you'd have to zone it multifamily. And in this case, there is no intention for apartment development on this specific lot, and I think that's really important that we're talking about this specific lot. The city intends to sell that property actually in the coming weeks. And so if, let's say, down the road, an owner wanted to split the back half off and sell it as a single-family lot, they would be able to do that under the R3 zoning because the R3 zoning allows for a smaller lot size. They wouldn't do that for the time being because there's well and septic back there, but if the city were to ever provide utilities along Burlowski and they were to put sewer and water laterals there and they want to split that off and sell it for a single family, that would be permissible under the R3 zoning. That is not the city's intention. The city is not playing developer for this specific lot. It's just rezoning it R3, so it provides the most flexibility for the future landowner to either keep it as single family or split the house onto a different lot than what's on the back side of it or the south side of the house to be a single family or a duplex as an example.
If they split it up, it's certainly going to have to be a small home.
Yeah, they'd have to meet all of the regular setbacks and everything that we already have in place in our ordinances.
Yeah, because that's a small piece of property to begin with. I can't imagine two more homes being in there, or however.
So the R3 zoning district does allow a minimum lot size requirement of 5,000 square feet. So
Okay.
you can get smaller lots in there if that's something that the future owner would want to do. Again, the R3 zoning allows the most flexibility for the future owner. If they wanted to keep that, I believe it's over an acre, that lot is, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so.
If they wanted to keep it as single family, they could. If they wanted to split it off into the future, that's something that they could do as well.
Okay. Well, we love where we live. We're just very concerned about what's to come. You know, it can change somebody's whole life. You can say, hey, you know, I don't know, maybe we ought to move because now we don't know what the city's going to do with that property. Do you know when you might be making decisions about that? The other properties
So
that
that's
you've purchased?
the one that's immediately north of Regent, and I don't want to get too into the weeds because we're still very much in the planning phase of that project. That is several years down the line. That's part of phase 2. Phase 1 is actually the stuff that's on the north side of Gala. That would be the first development, you know, so north of where you folks are, and this would be a part of a phase 2 development. So,
And in the interest of transparency, we talk about those areas being single-family lots.
Okay.
We're not looking up to put up apartment buildings and high-rises, but that's the plan now. And as the director said, we're pretty early in that process, but it is not the city's intention at this point in time to do anything other than single-family lots in that area.
and zero lot line, which would be, you know, single family per the building code, but
Right.
they would look like duplexes, but they would be owned individually.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate that good explanation there and answering my questions.
Thank you, and I hope everybody appreciates, we're being pretty unorthodox here. I know your chairman can speak to that. During a public hearing, generally it's not a back and forth question and answer, but I think it's very important because your concerns are legitimate. I would be nervous as well. What's going on next door? What's going on across the street? So we're taking a lot of liberties with the rules, and I hope nobody objects to that. And we just want to make sure everybody has as much information as they need to feel comfortable. Public hearing remains open.
So you had said earlier that you will be putting this up for sale in a short period of time?
Yes. Interested?
So it's owned by Stevens Point?
The city owns this right now, yes. And we have for a while.
So it's actually a benefit for you guys to split it to...
We're not looking at splitting
make it
anything,
an
sir.
Excuse me?
We're not looking at splitting anything. We're changing the zoning to match the surrounding area.
Well, then, yeah, the zoning would get changed, but then down the road, it could be sold as a parcel that could be split.
If an owner in the future wishes to split that parcel, they could do so now.
They can do so now, okay.
It's the zoning that really matters. If you can see the screen at all, the parcel immediately to the left of that, or the west, if you're looking at it the same way I am, is already 2 parcels on the same lot size.
Yes.
But we're not looking at splitting anything. All we're doing right now is looking at changing the zoning from our temporary zoning classification to R3 single and 2-family residential, which is in line with what the surrounding city properties are and future land use.
And just to provide additional clarification, even if it was remained as like an R1 single-family zoning, whomever acquires it could still split the lot. It's large enough where you could still split it and sell the south half of the lot for a single-family home, as an example. Again, just for the folks listening, you know, the R3 zoning is probably allows the most flexibility for this specific parcel and for whomever purchases this parcel from the city. Again, we are not the developer. We acquired it for the sole purpose of ensuring that our municipal boundaries were contiguous for future annexation of the proposed subdivision to the north. We have no reason to retain this parcel. We have no reason to develop it, and so it will be hitting the market as it is today at some point in the next few weeks.
Public hearing remains open. Public hearing is still open. And because the law says we have to, the public hearing remains open for the third and final time. Okay, hearing no further testimony, I will declare the public hearing closed. Bring it back to the commissioners. Commissioners, what are your wishes? Commissioner Cooper.
I'll move approval of the request as stated.
Thank you.
Second.
Second by Beacom. Discussion. Yes, ma'am.
I live on Sandpiper, so that's my neighborhood as well. I wouldn't like to see anything more than another single-family home on the back half of that lot. I don't know, you could get a little tiny single, or I mean a zero lot line in there, but that's not the plan, and it wouldn't fit with the neighborhood, and so I think this is a good option for whoever buys the property. They may like that nice big lot, and it may never change, and that would be a good thing. They could split it in half and put another house there, and that would be okay too.
And the point is, they could split it now without even changing the zoning. That lot can be split today.
But I think whatever happens, it'll stay consistent with the neighborhood with that zoning categorization. I don't think it'll look any out of place with the way things are there now.
Okay.
So.
Thank you. Commissioner Arntzen?
Could you clarify the zero lot line development? Is that two houses on the same parcel that are owned separately but share a wall?
Yeah, they technically
like row
are
houses or something?
Yeah, they're technically on separate parcels. Zero lot line homes have a parcel line going through the shared wall, essentially.
4th Avenue? You familiar with that area of town?
My house?
Those, yeah, well, that's right, her house.
Yeah, I'm a
the
zero
new
lot
houses on the old Grant School site?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm wondering how many of those could go in. So as of now, the parcel could be split into two developable parcels.
It could.
And then, so I think the concerns are at worst case scenario is that you'd split into two parcels, and then with R3, you could put two duplexes on there.
If they met all the setbacks and requirements, possibly yes.
Okay, but is that your understanding of kind of the worst case scenario that these folks might be concerned with?
I don't think they could split it more than once and meet all the setbacks.
That's what I was wondering about the zero lot line. That would have sizes. So, right, you could only split it.
Worst case scenario, I say you're pretty close to on par. I don't want to say it with certainty because there's probably something out there, or the future may change something.
So then on the flip side, we were talking about the size of the lot and then a developable area, and if somebody's going to buy it, maximize value, odds are they would split it and then have two single-family residences.
So there's a few things that come into lot splits. Not only is there a minimum square footage requirement for the lot itself, but there's also a minimum lot width requirement. And that varies just based on the zoning district. In this specific one, the home, it's about 120 feet. You could hypothetically split it into 3 separate lots. So you'd have the house on one lot, and then you could have 2 lots to the south. So you could have 2 more single-family homes under the R3 zoning code. Arguably, you could also have the 2 single-family homes under the R2 zoning code, as the city's code is written. Now, and I think that's an important thing to note, is that the county's zoning is R2. This is now in the city of Stevens Point, so the county zoning does not apply to this specific parcel. This is the city's zoning. And so you could get 1 to 2 additional homes on that lot if it were to be split down the road on the south half.
And had sewer and water.
And had sewer and water. And so that's another big point. This area is not sewered. And so because there's no utilities immediately available within that area, you have to have a minimum 2-acre size lot. If you create a new lot, that's per county regulation. And the city wouldn't allow the lot split unless it was on city sewer and water, because anytime you get more septic and wells in that area, we run into concerns about future contamination of surrounding wells in the area, but we also have concerns about the city's aquifer and our municipal water supply. So we have historically not allowed lot splits under 2 acres in that area.
All right, so now the current lot, about 1 acre, is not on city sewer and water yet, but
Correct.
will sometime and would certainly have to if there's a change. If somebody puts in a duplex split, it puts in 2 houses.
If I had a crystal ball, I would say yes, at some point it will be on city sewer and water.
Because there's no, I mean, you can't split it out. You couldn't split the lot and have another off septic house.
We would object to
residence.
that.
So, all right. So, again, I'm still kind of thinking this one through, comparing worst case and likely scenarios. And I'm not sure, so these things are allowed under R3. There are different setbacks and size limits for R1 and R2. Would you be able to, under R2, split and put in 2 single-family residences?
I believe it's large enough where you could.
But you wouldn't be able to get 3 in because of the additional area requirements and setback requirements.
Area requirements and then the street frontage requirements for the parcel. Those are, when we look at any lot split in the city, those are the 2 big drivers. What is the width of the lot at the street? The city does not allow what's known as a flag lot, where you have a skinny piece, maybe an axis that's 10 feet wide, and then at the back of the lot you have a larger piece where you could put a house. The city does not allow that within our zoning code. We require minimum lot widths, and then we require on top of that minimum lot areas. And so those are the 2 main things we have to look at anytime a lot is split. And we try to make sure, or we require that those are met. Now, if somebody isn't able to meet that, there is a variance process for them to go through. We have not historically advised folks to go through the variance process for pursuing those types of lot splits. Anytime there's a development, Washington Ave would be an example where we do a planned development district that requires, as this body knows, a whole nother round of public hearings, a whole nother round of considerations for a planned development zoning district as opposed to what is typically allowed within that area. Where Alder Nebo lives on Sandpiper, that area falls within the R3 zoning code. That's why those homes exist, with, I think they're probably 70 or 75 foot wide lots for each of those homes at a minimum. Again, in this scenario, you might have 120 or 130 feet of frontage on Burlowski. If you were to split the lot, you might be able to get 1. You maybe might get 2. It would just depend on how you split that lot and making sure that it meets the minimum area and the minimum street frontage requirements.
So, and now we were talking about the R2 and the county version. The city version has an R2, which would just be single-family residential, but it would have different widths and setbacks than R1 per se. R1 is a little bit larger, correct?
Correct. So R1 is our suburban single-family residential development. That is what would be a good area to use as an example of where that exists right now?
Southeast side, like.
Oh, sure. Yeah, off of Hoover, that area is R1 single family. We have larger lots, but it is single family on city sewer and water. R2, a good example of that area would be the Gerke, Washington neighborhood. There's a lot of R2 single family homes over there. R3 is kind of scattered throughout the city. We have a lot of folks out on this side of town, i.e. where Alder Nebo lives, that's R3, where you have single and 2 family mixes in. We also have a fair amount of R3 surrounding the university, the area south of downtown, and then the area on the north side of the city as well. So I would say R3 is probably our most common zoning district for residential, just in terms of number of parcels, because historically we've allowed a little higher density single family style development, and the R3 allows single and 2 family as well.
So R2 would be a reasonable alternative to R3. It would prevent the duplexes, but still allow lot splits and have 2 single-family residences on that parcel.
You could do the R2. Again, I think because part of the reason that staff brought this forward as R3 is because of our more, the 0 lot line plans for the area on the north side of this, Regent and the Gala Road area. And that's why we brought it forward as R3. My only concern with R2 is that there's no other R2 zoning out in that area. You have R1, R3, and R4. Remember, R4 is our multifamily zoning. There's no R2 in this area, so I do have some concerns about just having it as a straight R2. So that's why, another reason why staff brought it forward as R3.
Thanks.
Any other comments? Okay.
I'm debating about whether, do I want to make a motion to change the proposed zoning to R2? Again, I don't see as that much affecting the city's, long-term goals towards it and whatnot. And I acknowledge the concerns of the people that show up to these meetings. And we've talked about, negotiations with Hull anyway, and as Dave pointed out, the negotiations going on there. I don't know that I see a big detriment of going with R2, and you've mentioned some concerns, and I can see some benefits to doing that to the city and to the future developer, but I guess I'd like to make a motion that we change that the zoning change to R2 rather than R3.
We already had a motion for R3 though, right?
Yeah, you did. So you'd have to amend the, you'd have to do an amendment.
So actually, I don't know that we can do that because it's contradictory. You're not amending the motion, you're changing it. I think we'd be okay with amending it from R3 to R2 as a matter of legal policy or the legal procedure in regards to an amendment. But it's like, I wish Logan were here. I can't make a motion to put a stop sign at that corner and then you amend the motion to not put a stop sign at that corner. That we can't do that.
And I guess I have another question. I don't know if I can ask my co-members and if they want to chime in. Is this just me, or I'm thinking through this, and does anybody agree with me, or am I out in left field?
I think the community's greatest need is single family, but I do feel like we have a shortage of two family too. So, whether it's a great fit for this neighborhood, I leave that up to staff, but both of those options I think are desirable. More single-family houses, the better for Stevens Point, but I would be accepting of R3 if that was on the table.
Well, and I think Mr. Schuler can vouch for this too, being decades in the planning and zoning department. Since we don't have any other R2 in the area, this to me, changing it to R2 would seem almost like a spot zone. Right, it'll be the only one in a sea of not
residential.
R2s.
Though I mean,
it's still residential, but you are making one parcel. You're making one parcel something different than everything around it.
I think it would be, on its face, you could describe it as that, but the intent of what a spot zoning would be very different. Spot zoning would be
opposite, generally
if you stick commercial in the middle of a residential area to benefit one property owner, that's a spot zone. So I guess if I could hear from staff, just if you looked at R3 versus R2, are there any really compelling reasons to leave it as is, or to maybe change it? Because you said that when you brought it forward, you felt like this was, given the context of the neighborhood, both to the south where there's a mix of residential zonings, including the R3, and the north is going to have R3, this seemed like a fit in between it as a single parcel.
The intention of bringing it forward as R3 was for the purpose of the areas to the north, that being a single and two-family development. And again, the city is playing developer in that situation, not in this one. And that the R3 zoning allows for the most flexibility for whomever acquires the parcel from the city. If they wanted to split it, they could split it. If they buy it and they want to split it, hell, the city could buy it. The city could split it tomorrow if we wanted to and do a single family home, provided that it has appropriate sewer water capabilities. And that's something I think that we kind of glossed over, but it's really important that we note that we wouldn't allow any more well and septic in that area. That was really the driving force between why we brought it forward as R3 as opposed to R2 or R1. The intention of city staff, and this body will have the ultimate authority on it, of course, in the council, is that area to the north will be zoned R3, and that will have single and two family. And so it doesn't make sense to me to have this as the only R2 parcel in that area. To the southeast, you have R1. South of that, you have R3, and south of that, you have a mixture of multifamily and commercial zoning. Having one parcel as R2 out there, does it make a difference whether it's R2 or R3? Probably not, but I think for the sake of continuity, it makes the most sense to have it as R3. So I do think that you can amend the motion to make it R2 as opposed to R3. That would just be a simple amendment, really no different than other amendments. So if that's something Mr. Artson would want to do, I've worked in communities where that's been a motion that's been made, and the legal counsel there has always accepted it. So I've always operated under that assumption that you could do that.
Well, my assumption would be that the amendment would be to change the zoning to R2, and the committee would vote up or down on whether that's a good idea, and that would then become either by default the main motion, or you would then vote on the main motion with it being R2.
Correct. That's what we'll do if that's the route you want to go, Mr. Artson.
I think it's worthwhile, yeah.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend
have to say.
from R3 to R2. Is there a second to that motion? For lack of a second, the motion dies.
All right, fair enough. Now I know.
So we're back to the original motion, which is R3, single and two-family residential. Further discussion there?
To echo your comment, when I bought my zero lot line on Sandpiper in 2006, it was all I could afford. And it was, as the reassessment is almost doubled the value, which is totally unbelievable. But the single-family house that's directly behind me would still be out of my reach because of how much more that's worth now. So if we want to get people into housing, we have to give them affordable options. And sometimes the zero lot line, I own the property. I own the half in the backyard and the front yard. That's all mine. And the neighbor behind me, they're all single family, and it's not an issue. If this lot could be split and you put a zero lot line, you put two more people in housing that they might not otherwise be able to afford, because single family homes now are almost out of reach of new home buyers. So anyway, and who knows what will happen in the future, but that's just another perspective.
Good, thanks.
Any further discussion? Hearing and seeing none, the motion once again is to zone it R3 single and two-family residential. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that is approved. Item number 4 is a request from Danielle Zellner, representing Valley Communities Credit Union, for a sign variance to install a freestanding sign on the property located at 2940 Church Street, consistent with Chapter 25.14. That also happens to be their primary office. Adam?
All right, thank you, Mayor. So the applicant is looking to install the freestanding sign that's shown on the left side of the screen. The reason for this sign variance request is that this proposed sign is slated to be approximately 8 feet in height, or 14 feet in height, and just shy over 60 square feet in size. This parcel is zoned R5 multifamily 2 residential, as shown on the slide here, which does require a maximum sign height of 8 feet and a maximum area allowance of 32 square feet. So some things to make note of in the context of the variance request. One would be the zoning of, I'd say, this rough city block between Whiting Ave and I believe Henrietta is the next, William Street, my bad, is zoned R5 multifamily 2 residential. This whole stretch of Church Street from the underpass down to the city's southern municipal boundary is zoned almost exclusively B4 commercial, with the exception of this city block. So staff believes that that is one reason to allow for the special exception, given the consistency of zoning for the entire stretch of the Church Street corridor, with the exception of this city block. Next side of the screen, next slide on the presentation, you'll see, again, just an overview of the subject parcel and then a street view. According to the applicant's application, the primary intention with this larger and taller sign is to better direct traffic flow within the site. As you can see, there's an entrance-only driveway and exit-only driveway, each off of Church Street. So this sign is intended to better direct visitors for this drive-through establishment to better acknowledge which driveway entrance to open and exit out of, so you don't have any potential crashes down the road. So as I mentioned, staff did take a look at the 4 variance standards included within the packet and would recommend approval subject to the conditions on page 15.
There is no public hearing on this one, so commissioners, it's in your hands.
For the commercial districts, other than this particular chunk, what's the max sign height?
Sign height would be 20 feet.
20 feet.
Anyone at all? Thank you, Commissioner
I'll move
Cooper.
approval of the request with staff recommended conditions.
Thank you.
Second.
Seconded by
I was
Kneebone.
just looking to see how to word it. Thanks.
You've been doing this long enough. You know how to word it. All right, any further discussion? Mr. Schuler?
Well, I guess as I look at the site and I look at the surrounding properties, I know that this is a stretch of zoning that has more restrictive sign height. That's why we're here tonight. The Gowie Title and Ansay Insurance both have a smaller sign. I assume that's coming in more at the 8-foot height.
Fair to assume, correct.
And as I drive through that stretch, I find their signs much more appealing than the taller signs, just from my point of view. As a driver down the road, they look better at that height. And I guess as I look at the safety issue, it's got a one-way in, one-way out. And the main problem to see southbound traffic as you go to exit is the size and location of the exit sign, which is not related to this. The sign itself is situated such that it really doesn't impede your view to the north to see oncoming traffic, and there's nothing blocking your view to the south. So I guess with that impression on my part, I don't feel like they really meet the standards to approve, and I'll be voting no.
Okay, any other comments? Just for the record, Jeff, it doesn't matter. We're going to make it 3 lanes anyway. Sorry.
I was going to say, I thought it was going to be 6.
All right, no further discussion. If you're in favor of the motion, you'll vote yes. Oh, I'm sorry. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
Got that noted? Yep. Motion passes. And our agenda is exhausted, and we are adjourned at 6:42.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.